互い大切にしてたものをお互いのために振り飛ばしてお互いの笑顔を
Yoron Sabitan. Hello, Yoron. What is special about Yoron Island? Here is a story. It's about the life of Seino-san. In search of an endless dream, he drifted to the southern island called Yoron. He spent all his life pursuing painting and designing. How exciting it is to open the door and meet him. Seino-san, hello. Yes? Please show me your tree nymph butterflies. Okay, come on in. They are eating. Oh, are they? These two butterflies are sucking nectar. Yes. They are perching and eating. As drifters, I don't know whether this expression is proper or not. It's been about 50 years since we came to this island. I'd like to ask you a little bit about a story when you first came to the island. When was your first visit? I don't remember what year it was. Was it before Okinawa returned to mainland Japan? It was before the return. That means probably a few years before 1972. I traveled all around Japan and ended up arriving at Yoron. You did not mean that you aimed to come to Yoron for some special reasons. No, I didn't. I traveled around all over the country, starting from Hokkaido and crossed down to south and farther south. Finally, I had to give up my travel in Yoron. Having traveled for more than 3 or 4 years, I had no resident card, so I could not get a passport to go to Okinawa. Oh yes, we needed it at that time. Yes, that was the situation I was in. In fact, Yoron was the southernmost tip of Japan at that time. A little coincidence caused you to get off the ship. Yes, that's true. Well, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the story before you came to Yoron. You're from Fukushima Prefecture, right? Yes, from Tara City. And you graduated from local high school. Yes. You got a job at a local company making signs. No, not exactly. I was a disciple. Oh, disciple. Only because you like to draw pictures? Yes, that was all I wanted. After all, there were no jobs to draw signs. Besides, I was a redneck. I didn't know the real world. How long had you been there? For 3 years. That means you are 21, I guess. I think I was. After that you went to Tokyo, I hear. What made up your mind to move on to Tokyo? Well, I did not want to end my life with only as a signboard painter. I wanted to do something a bit more significant and interesting. So you went to Tokyo and got a job in a design office. In those days, there were not so many design offices as we see today. My brother happened to work for the printing company in Tokyo, so an acquaintance of my brother rented a 6-tatami mat room in Ikebukuro. We used the room to do some designs. A teacher and some disciples worked together. What kind of genre was that design? It was not such an established genre as we could define what it was. It was quite personal and private. Then, roughly speaking, was it a sort of a graphic design? It might have been. It was a printing-related one. Printing-related matter. In those days, design business was not so popular as it is today. So, that was somewhat like lettering. Yes, I designed characters of about 1 centimeter square like this. Yoron was in the limelight as a tourist destination in the 1970s. During those periods, I had opportunities to see you draw signs at various places. Both of your work experience of drawing signs and lettering greatly helped you do the work in those days, I think. I agree. In fact, that sort of man talented in drawing did not live on the island. Right. That means, consequently, almost all of the signs were designed and created by you, Seino-san. Well, not really. There were not many signs themselves. As time went on, more and more guest houses were built. Do you see any signs left? No, I don't think so. I'd like to get back to the beginning of the story. I hear you lived in a tent in the first place. I camped on the beach of Organic among mogomao trees. Among Australian pine trees, I see. Had such a life lasted for several months? Yes, at the first time I visited, there had already been more than 10 people living in a tent. Oh, that many. The number gradually increased and eventually it was up to about 20. A lot of young tourists had visited the island because Yoron was the southernmost point of Japan at that time. Didn't you work after a while? No, I didn't. When I ran out of money, I went to Osaka and worked there, saved money, and I came back to Yoron again. That means at the beginning you were going back and forth for a while. Right. At the second time I visited, I had already had some acquaintances. We did various things this and that together. There is a pretty large cave between Tatedara and Watanji Beach, I guess. I hear you spent some time there, in the cave. It's a little hard to ask, but did you even cook in the cave? Yes, we did. We did everything we needed in our lives. There was water out there. Oh yes, I remember. After a while, you moved to a tenement called Nagaya in Chabana district. There was a place which was called Happy Land, I hear. The place for young travelers to get together. Yes. Did the house catch fire or anything serious happened? Yes, it became a fire on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve. One of my acquaintances, should I say he burned it or it burned itself? And he was drunk, he had a big burn. Oh, too bad. Oh no, he burned himself. Did he save his life? Well, he had been unconscious for a week. There was only a clinic on the island. There were not any good treatment applied for him except antibiotics, but he could not swallow it, so they just poured it over his body. That was a terrible accident. And what happened to both of you after that? Did you interact with him? Well, we had mutual exchanges a few times a year. Did you mean he had left Yoron for good? Yes. Decades later, you had the opportunity to reunite with him and held a joint solo exhibition. I'll skip a story. After the tenement accident, you moved to Higashi Ward, and years after you got married. Later, in 1983, the government of Yoron town declared the Kingdom of Panauru for the purpose of developing the tourism industry. To start a new project, the government needed your skills to accomplish it in the field of advertising. What kind of work specifically did you do at that time? I was always involved in town work, so... Is this statue named Kariushi too? A kind of a symbol of the town? Yes, this is also one of my works. So, around this time, it is not just so-called signboard, but it becomes a three-dimensional work, a monument. I think we can call it a monument. These kinds of objects can be seen all over the island. Can we find one in Okinawa too? Yes, there is one. A statue of an imaginary bird called Kariushi-kun. Where is it in Okinawa? It stands at the Cape Hedo. Does it stand facing Yoron? Yes, it does. Talking of a bird, is that bird with red beak indigenous to Okinawa? Yes, it's called Yambaru-quina, Okinawa rail. As a result, you did a lot of work related to the projects of town hall. For example, airfield, various public facilities, road signs, etc. Some years later, Prussia Resort Hotel opened, and you did a lot of work related to the hotel, I think. Yes, that's true. You not only drew signs, but also designed the hotel itself, right? Well, most of the objects made of concrete are my works. There is an open terrace named Mikono Square on a hill overlooking Sunset Beach. There we can see a fountain and some buildings. Are those artworks also yours? Yes, I designed the whole square and its space with reliefs and objects such as clamshells, a fountain, and so on. That's amazing. You are no longer just a signboard painter, but a comprehensive designer. Well, jack of all trades. Marvelous. Everything that comes into tourists' eyes is your works. It is like a monument. I mean a monument of your own island. Naturally, his life started with painting. Looking back on his work, it became a guidepost for the tourism industry of Yoron Island. And at the same time, his life bloomed beautifully on the stage called Yoron Island. Thank you for listening.